Today, Al Cobb, who, as you know, is a SIP expert and building science educator, is going to be talking to us about what you need to know as a SIP builder regarding wall and roof assemblies. He'll be referring to the Chapter 8 in Building with SIP's Need to Know brochure, as well as the companion guide, which is SIP Builder BP8. Now, both of these publications are free to download at sips.org. And without further ado, Al, take it away.
And the first one, subsection 8.1, if you will, is really talking about climate zones. And as a builder, you need to know what climate zone you're in because the code is very specific about how we treat climate zones, or more importantly, details within various climate zones. We certainly do things differently in Maine, where you live, Mary, than we do down here in West Virginia, or heavens knows what we do down in Phoenix, because the climate is completely different. So it's incredibly important to know what climate zone you are in and follow the details and the requirements of that specific climate zone. And 8.2 title of it is essentially do not use low perm underlayments, ice and water shield on SIP roofs, except in valleys. Kudos to that, because this is one of the areas where I see more problems with SIPs in terms of durability when somebody doesn't follow the guidelines prescribed by the code and by SIPA, which says we do not want to put a low perm underlayment on top of a roof assembly. And the reason is because we're trapping moisture underneath that low perm area. We want a SIP to be able to dry in order to remain durable first and foremost. But the way we do that is to look at the permeability of the claddings that are going to go over, or the underlayments that are going to go over top of that roof panel. So therefore, it's very important to understand, where am I building? What does the code require in that particular location? And if we're putting up a non-ventilated roof deck, do we need to increase its drying potential by making sure that we have then put back ventilation underneath that cladding? Now, some people might call that cold roof. We're not going to ventilate underneath between the roofing insulation and another layer of roofing, and we would call that cold roof. Whereas if we were on the walls, we might call it rain screen. And that is what we're trying to do to keep our buildings durable and prevent any moisture problems long-term. Basically, what is our third subsection? And that's time to talk about reservoir cladding. Why that's important is because a lot of designers, a lot of contractors like to use brick and stone and concrete sheathing and other materials, which essentially are known in the building science world as reservoir cladding. That means that they can soak up water. If the house gets rained on, it's going to soak up moisture, and it's going to hold on to that moisture, i.e. the term reservoir, right? And then when the sun comes out, this strange things in physics happens where it drives with pressure the vapor that it creates within that reservoir cladding into our structure. And that can be a dangerous thing, because we don't want moisture inside of our assemblies. We want to allow them to dry out. And so those reservoir claddings are particularly important to have back ventilation. In the code, it's absolutely required behind brick and stone that you have an air space so that air can move and help dry them out. This is also true if you choose a wall cladding that is a cementitious siding, because that cementitious siding material will get wet, it will absorb moisture, and then potentially you'll get vapor drive, which pushes that moisture into your assembly where we don't want it. So if you're going to use reservoir claddings, make sure we use back ventilation. And that's true almost where we are. I don't care if you're in Phoenix and you have huge drying potential. A big rainstorm that gets the stone or the brick wet is going to push that vapor into your building. So we want to have that back ventilation behind all reservoir claddings. Fastening claddings to the wall or the roof assembly, I would say that in most cases, I run across this as an issue where we deal with metal roofing. A lot of metal roofing wants to attach to a rafter or a truss or some type of embedded lumber that they know what the pullout value or the holding value is in order to have proper fastening of their cladding onto the structure. If the structure is made out of SIPs, and SIPs inherently don't have nearly as much lumber inside, as we talked about framing factor earlier in this series, the framing factor is low, therefore there's not a lot of lumber to attach to. We have 7/16 OSB or maybe something thicker, depending upon the type of SIP you're using. And therefore, it is incumbent upon the cladding manufacturer to define how their material gets attached and held to the structural insulated panel. Go back to the cladding manufacturer and say, I'm applying your product to a SIP, which is 7/16 OSB. I need you to specify the fastening schedule to hold your material to 7/16 OSB. And if you don't want to give it to me, then I'll go use your competition. Subsection, we want to talk about fully adhered products over top of SIP roofs, often done in commercial structures where a TPO or a rubber membrane or some type of flat roof gets a fully adhered roof membrane over top of it. The concern that we have as an industry, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, it's a concern we should all have in any high performance home, regardless of what it's made from, because we're not allowing air to move through it. We have a lower capacity to dry. And if we put a membrane on the outside where the vapor barrier doesn't go necessarily on the outside, it wants to go on the inside per the code, we've now got potentially a barrier on both the bottom of the roof deck and the top of the roof deck, and moisture gets in there. It can't go in either direction to dry out. This is to say, we still can use this type of a membrane system. We just need to incorporate a means for airflow underneath it and a means for that air to escape and get out. It's easily done. You just have to know that it's important that it does get done and verify that air is moving to allow that moisture to escape. Otherwise, you're going to have accumulated moisture and potentially durability issues.
SIP Builder BP 8.8, SIP tape.
You might say, well, okay, where does that SIP tape go? The code is very clear on this. SIP tape acts as a vapor barrier. And the code says that the vapor barrier must go on the warm side. Well, where's the warm side? The warm side is where you're going to, if you live in the north, it's pretty obvious where the warm side is, right? It's on the inside of your structure. If you're down in climate zone 1, the warm side is on the outside of your structure. If you're building this in Miami, the SIP tape goes on the outside. But if you're up in Maine, where you are, Mary, it's going to go on the inside. The vast majority of the country, however, is in climate zone 4. We get hot and cold seasons. So where do we put it? Do we put it on the inside or do we put it on the outside? The reason we put it on the inside is because the differential temperature in the winter, differential temperature between interior space and outside is much, much greater than it is in the summertime. So the SIP tape as a belt and suspenders sealing methodology is going to go to the inside of your structure. And that's going to prevent air movement through the joint if, in fact, the sealant on the inside is somehow still allowing air to move through. And that's what's going to give us the air tightness that we need. And once we put that tape on, we then have a continuous air barrier, if you will, that also is going to act as a vapor barrier because SIP tape acts as a vapor barrier because that's the way it was designed. And that's going to be very important when you look at your overall sealing methodology of making this building nice and airtight and high performing. Moving on, let's talk about solar panels. Because if you're going to build an energy efficient SIP house, why wouldn't you put solar panels on top of it? The good news is you can. It just means that we need to think a little bit about how a solar array gets attached to the roof SIPs. It's important to plan for and understand that lumber embedded in the roof panels is an integral part to a SIP system that can allow you to attach a solar array merely by understanding and knowing where those lumber elements are, so that when the solar installer comes onto site to attach the panels, They simply are going to lag or bolt or screw into that dimensional lumber, which is going to give your solar array the additional hold power that it needs so it's not going to blow away in the wind. Hey, last, certainly not least, let's talk about ridge vents. Do we need them? Why? Well, the answer is yes. We do need a ridge vent in most cases, especially if we have done, as we stated earlier, put in back ventilation behind our cladding. That back ventilation is an airspace, and there's air moving under that cladding. Where's that air going to go if it doesn't have a ridge vent? Let's not confuse, however, the ridge vent with traditional frame construction where that ridge vent is actually getting air out of an unconditioned attic. We don't have an unconditioned attic. We have conditioned space because we built with SIPs. That's a good thing. We certainly are not going to cut through the SIP and ventilate underneath the SIP. That isn't going to happen, although I have seen the builder try to do that. What we want to do is put the ridge vent in, whether that be metal or asphalt shingle or anything else, so that the air that's moving up that roof plane underneath the cladding, carrying that moisture and helping to dry and keep things cool, has a way to get out of the roof. So ridge vents are something that we very often do see in SIP roof assemblies. So first and foremost, hopefully we know where we're building and what the requirements are from the code in that particular geographic location. And what is the, wetting environment in there? So you have to understand that and how you're going to meet that local environmental aspect of what you're doing. And it all falls down to keep things as dry as you can, but more importantly, know how to get them to dry out. Understand where and when you need back ventilation. And all of that falls right into the code requirement of vapor barriers, and where does that vapor barrier get applied so that we know that we're allowing this assembly, whether it be wall or roof, the proper ability to dry and stay durable.
Thanks, Al. To learn more about Al Cobb's SIP School and his in person trainings, visit sipschool.org. Remember to visit SIPS.org to learn about how you can become a SIPA registered builder by taking our free 10-hour Learn at Your Own Rate online program. And while you're there, check out our other free resources, including more videos about building with SIPs.